Welcome, listeners, to the Lust for Life podcast, where you'll be joining a girl on her journey to discovering the depths of emotional intelligence. This is your host, Tennessee Reed. Welcome back, everybody. It's super great to have you. It's always fun to make these episodes, and I'm really excited about this week's topic. This week is a little bit different. We are having our book club discussion. This month, we decided to, I decided because I love it so much, to read The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. And it's amazing. We have one of our book club members here, Haley Bartholomew Schellenberg, and we're just going to have this discussion together. We both read it this last month, and it's so meaty. So we're going to just try our best to break it apart. Haley, do you want to say a quick hello to the audience here?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm really excited to be talking about the book and be here. And yeah.
Well, thanks for being here. Um, I have a passion for reading and I want to share that and create this community. So I'm really excited that we get to have this discussion today. So this last month, like I said, we read The Mountain Is You. Have you ever seen this or heard of this book before?
No, I hadn't heard of it before, but yeah, it was really an interesting book. It was a good choice by you, so way to
Well,
go.
thank you. It's an interesting book. It's all about, this sounds like kind of aggressive, and you're like, oh, it may not be for me, but it's all about self-sabotage and like self-limiting yourself and how we subconsciously do it. And when I first got this book, I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. And I read it and I was like, oh, I don't think I self-sabotage. Like that sounds really like aggressive, but it's interesting as you kind of like read through the book and she breaks it apart. You're like, oh, maybe I do a little bit. Maybe like you have like these like intrinsic characteristics that you do that you don't even know you do because it's been such a habit. Um, did you find that that theme was helpful for you? Did you have a similar experience as me where you were like, this kind of seems aggressive, but then some of the concepts actually applied?
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I had a similar experience. Just like, well, I don't know how I feel about like, yeah, the topic, like calling it self-sabotage just sounds like, yeah, kind of intense. And so I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I don't do that. But then like, yeah, there are like some things and examples I'm like, yeah, okay, I can see that. Like I've definitely done that before. And like, yeah, so I think I kind of resonated with how your experience was too.
So this book was super interesting and very personal. And it's like when something's so intricate as this book, it's almost hard to like nitpick some of the things out of this book.
Hmm.
But my favorite part that I read was just like she mentioned imagining yourself in like it's up to you how many years you want to imagine your future self, the best version of yourself, and like sitting down and having, like breakfast with them or something and asking them all these questions and just imagining what that future self would look like, your dream future self. What are you wearing? What are you doing? How are you speaking? And then also, if you could go back to your younger self, like how would you address your younger self? That I know that's like such an intimate topic, but it was pretty motivating for me to think, what am I going to look like in 10 years? Am I doing the things now that are leading to me looking like my best version of myself in 10 years? That was the most motivating piece that she spoke about for me. How did you feel about that part?
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting too. I actually just read that part today, and I thought it was really cool to think about, yeah, just like your future self coming in and like talking to you. And it reminded me, like, I'm this summer, I'm working with some high schoolers at UVU, like in a concurrent enrollment program. And one of the teachers had them like fill out like a get to know you survey kind of thing. And like they had to question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And it was just interesting to see them like answering the questions and saying things that are like really, really cool goals that they had, but also just like most of them for their 5 year goal was like graduate college. And like I was like, oh well, I just graduated college, so it just was weird for me to be like, oh, I'm like at the point where they see themselves in 5 years. And so it was like kind of interesting for me to like put that into perspective and then be like, okay, where do I see myself in those 5 years and everything? And it was just interesting because one of the other questions, sorry to go on this tangent, but one of the other questions was if you could travel into the future, would you? And like,
Hmm.
what time would you go to? And like when I read that, I was like, I feel like I would, but I would pick like 5 to 10 years from now just to see like how the timing of my life plays out. Just because I'm kind of worried about like that right now is like my main thing, like figuring out the timing of how I want like my career to go and like when to start having kids and everything. I just am like, I don't know how to figure that out. And so that's like was my initial instinct was, okay, yeah, I would go like 5 to 10 years in the future and just try and see what did I end up doing and did it work and like then go from there. So I thought that that was like my first thought when I like read that too, of like talking to your future self and like what time period I would pick would just be not too far in the future, but just to kind of help me out where I'm at now, I guess.
Just far enough where it's like still motivating it because if you pick like 20 years, like in your mind, you're like, that's never gonna happen. Like that will
Yeah.
never come. Like that time will never come. But if you pick like 5 years, like you said, it's like touchable. You can like almost see at the end of the tunnel. That's pretty cool that you were able to work with those students
Mhm.
at the at University of Utah Valley University for because they are about 5 years younger than you, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. It's almost like that is a younger version of yourself. Like you imagine what you were like that age. And I remember when I first started college, I was like, oh my gosh, when I graduate, I'm gonna be so old and I'll have a real job. And I'm like, that is kind of like unfathomable. And now that I'm here in this position, I'm like, oh, it's just how it is. But then
Mhm.
I think there's value in looking back and seeing everything you've accomplished too. We pay attention so much of like what we want to look like, what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, but we forget to look back sometimes because college is hard. Like that's a
Mhm.
lot of blood, sweat, and tears, lots of tears from completing it. And so it's always good to look back, see where you've come from, how far you've come, and it's motivating to know that you can do hard things.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree 100%.
And I also wanted to add, as we were talking about this, it reminded me, I don't know if you've seen this, but it's a video of Matthew McConaughey, and he was saying, like, he was talking about who his hero is. And he said his motivating hero in this life is himself in 10 years. And
Mhm.
then when that 10 years comes, it's himself in another 10 years because he imagines what he's going to look like, what he's going to accomplish, what he's going to do. And then like that's his motivating factor. That's his hero. That's what the best version of himself looks like. And he's going to continue to grow and like achieve that version of himself, which I've always liked that video. I think I've mentioned that in previous podcasts, but it's just a really motivating speech that he gave. So if you have time to look it up, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll have to look that up. That sounds really cool. And like, yeah, that's a really cool concept. Just 10 years at a time and
Yep.
be your own
Yep.
hero. I love that.
Um, so that was kind of my favorite part of the book. There's lots of others that I really liked, but I want you to also share some of your perspective on things and some of your favorite parts.
Yeah, okay. So I feel like one of my favorite parts that was kind of towards the beginning, but like it just stuck out to me and like stuck with me throughout reading the whole thing. And like just lately I've been thinking about a lot is like when she talked about our friendships and just our relationships in general. And like she kind of said something along the lines of like to pay attention to how you feel after an interaction with someone and like to notice like do you feel filled, happy, excited, encouraged, or do you feel like super exhausted, annoyed, like discouraged? Like do you feel down or happy, just like how do you feel after spending time with someone? And I was like, that is so interesting to think of it that way because immediately I could think of people in both circumstances. Like I feel very encouraged and uplifted when I hang out with them, or that I feel really discouraged and like downtrodden and kind of just down on myself after hanging out with them. And so it was just interesting to just like have that pointed out and like become aware of it. And I was like, okay, what can I like do about this with my friendships? Like for sure, like strengthen and prioritize the ones that do feel really good. But then like what can I maybe do differently in the ones that I'm not feeling that fulfillment and encouragement, after being with them. And so it was just a good perspective to like just have that written out so simply. I was like, oh wow, that's good to like just kind of self-reflect on. So
Yes,
that's my
that's
favorite.
a big reason why I like this book is because she points out things that you kind of already subconsciously know and you're subconsciously doing, but it puts it into like a conceptual thought that you can like think about and use as a skill because that's a hard skill to have and a hard skill to be able to develop is this person giving me energy or is this person taking away energy from me? Which is like it's kind of hard to figure that out at first because you feel like you're like I'm not a mean person, but I also am not feeling like you're giving me any energy. So there was a quote on Instagram that I saw the other day. It was, what did it exactly say? It was something like, I'm I'm not an introvert, but I don't like spending time with people that take my energy away, and I love spending time with people that give me energy. So, and most people, unfortunately, will probably take your energy. And you know, when you think about those people, you're like, I love hanging out with them. I love hanging out with them. They motivate me. They're funny. They're fun. They bring energy and you're just laughing or they motivate you in any type of way. And you're in listeners, you know who these people are. And those are the types of people that you're not an introvert around because they give you energy. You become an introvert when energy is taken from you and it requires effort, a ton of effort, unnecessary effort on your part, and there's not energy given in return. So I loved that part. That's something that I've been working on this last year during kind of my self-development and healing process was like, being sparing about my energy. And that was a big concept. So I love that. Love that.
Yeah, yeah. It's been super good to like, yeah, just be aware of and just, yeah, it's been something that was like right at the beginning, but I just didn't forget it. Like it stuck with me.
You know, another part of the book that was really interesting that like I did not expect. So I've read this book 3 times now. This is my third time reading this book because it is so good. Like it just has like a lot of basic fundamental concepts that are easy to forget, but easily reminded too. So the concept where she talked about how your like nervous system is connected to your gut, wasn't that interesting?
Yeah, that was so interesting. Yeah.
It's like kind of a wild thought that your mind is literally connected to your gut. And like if you think about it, like have you ever like I mean you hear the phrase of like my heart was in my stomach. Because that's like the feeling you get because your mind is connected to your gut. So like if let's say you forgot to thaw the chicken and your mom is coming home and you're like, oh my gosh, like that feeling is connected to your gut. And so it's interesting how we store different tensions in our body. She talked all about it. Like stress
Mhm.
is on your back and like guilt, I think, and nervousness is in your stomach, which is so true. Like that's not just like voodoo stuff. Like it's actually like if you think about experiences you've had, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, when you're stressed out, you naturally rub your neck. And then if you're like are nervous, your stomach it has butterflies. So it's interesting that she brought that up. But something that I really liked about that concept, and it kind of goes back to your 5 years, like as you said, you just have a lot of like choices to make these next 5 years of career and family. And I feel like there's always a lot of choices to be made during this life. But something that I found interesting was your gut is naturally going to take you to places you're drawn to. So, for example, if you don't like your work, if you don't like your job, you're naturally going to literally like spend as little time at the job as possible. You're going to check in, you're going to do your work as fast as possible, and you're going to leave. You're not going to mingle after. You're not going to, like, if you don't like your job, you're just going to leave. And that's naturally you are shying away from things that you don't like. And so I feel like we have this tendency to create characters of ourselves that are actually not meant for us. We have people tell us at some point in our life that we need to do this with our life or we need to do this. And then we force that upon ourselves when we probably don't even want to do it. And we forget about the things that we actually want to do. Did you actually want to be an artist? Did you actually want to be a hairstylist? Did you actually want to be a designer? Or because that's something you love to do, but you lose that touch with what you actually want to be because you've been forced by society and these opinions of others of what you should be. And so I loved that she talked about that and how you've got to listen to your gut feelings and how that is going to lead you to the most happiness and like the least resistance too. Because I know I'm going on a tangent, but this connects to like Forrest Gump. I talk about this all the time. Um, have you seen the movie Forrest Gump?
No, but I feel like I know
Oh
enough.
my gosh, you have to watch it. Okay, I'll explain it a little bit.
Okay.
So there's this feather at the beginning of the movie, and it basically signifies Forrest Gump's life. And essentially, he does things just on the whim if he feels like it. And like he has accomplished so many great things because he's like, yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And like such random things like ping pong, the military, a shrimping boat. Like, and this feather is throughout the movie represents him just kind of going where the wind takes him. And I just love that concept because I feel like we resist so much of what we're meant to be and what we're meant to do because we have this like imposed character that we're supposed to be rather than just doing the path that was built for us. I feel like we miss a lot of opportunities because we kind of mischaracterized ourselves. So that was something that I really, really liked. And it reminded me of when you were saying that you just have a lot of decisions these next 5 years and they're hard to make. Um, but what's meant for you will be for you, you know? Like that's I love that concept of what's meant for me will be for me. And if it's not meant for me, then that's okay. Because I feel like we get scared of, oh my gosh, what if we miss this opportunity? What if we don't do this? What if we don't do that? And so that whole concept of the gut kind of going with the wind like Forrest Gump and kind of letting our gut help us make decisions was really, really cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. I love that representation with the feather. That's really cool to think about. And I love how you've always said, what will be for me. What is it again?
What will be from, oh, what did I say? Uh, what will be for me will be for me or something. Like, what did I
Yeah,
said it like perfectly, but that doesn't sound the same what I said, but you guys get the
yeah.
concept. But yeah, what will
Mhm.
be for me will show up in my life at the right time, at the right moment, as long as I'm doing everything else right.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. And I had like a life coach once tell me like a similar phrase, but which was like come what may, and just like
Yes.
have that as like a motto. And I'm like, I love that. Just like kind of like the feather. Just like, okay, I'm gonna do
Hmm.
what I do and just come what may, like I'm gonna be okay and like it's gonna be all right. I'm
It
just
takes
gonna
away
keep
a lot of anxiety like that
Mhm.
because it truly like I mean worrying and anxiety are very much linked. And just that concept just takes away a lot of that, a lot of the anxiety of, because I mean, there's a lot to worry about in this life. And so if you kind of let it, it will kind of take you over, you know?
Yeah, I agree for sure. And I think that also like goes into like reminding me of another thing that I liked about the book was when she talked about change and just that like in
Hmm.
general like change is just going to be uncomfortable until it becomes comfortable. And like I just loved that so much and that like you need adjustment whenever there's a big change in your life. Like it just was said so simply like it's just straight up every change is going to be uncomfortable until it becomes like a comfortable feeling again and it becomes routine and you're like accepting it and like it can be like the littlest thing to big changes and I just thought that was really interesting and like she brought up like a few different like transitions of life kind of changes and like I think it just like it's resonated with me because like the transition to getting married 10 months ago was just like I didn't think it was going to be as much of an adjustment and change as like it was and like it makes sense but I just feel like no one warned me, no one told me it's like a big adjustment but like I mean it makes sense, it just like it was just hard, it was just like because we just jumped right into school right after getting back from our honeymoon so it just was just a lot of change at once too, it wasn't just getting married and like living together, it was also like full on school and everything and a new job, it was just like so much new all at once that it was like it was a lot to handle. And so now after like hearing what she was talking about with change, I was like, okay, I wish like I was more aware of that at that point in my life. But now I'm like, okay, now I can be aware of it in the future, I guess, and use that.
I loved that concept also. And I loved how you applied it to like that experience in your life. Because, I mean, most people get married and it is an adjustment. It is hard. The first few months of marriage, like, it's not that they're not lovely, but it is an adjustment. It's a completely different lifestyle. You are now a team and you have to be a team player. It's a big change. I loved that concept. Like that concept was like my love language because I mean, I don't know if you had like someone tell you this growing up, but I always remember like multiple people telling me like something along the lines of like it just doesn't feel right. This is just this there's too many things not working for me at this moment. So I'm just gonna give it up when it was a new concept or something. And like I think President Monson from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, one of the apostles, spoke about this in one of his general conference talks. Um, but he was like, there's a difference between like change and then something's not right for you. Change is always going to be hard. And it's so easy to think that because it's hard, you should give it up. Because it's hard, it's not meant for you. And so that was like an interesting concept when I first read the book too. I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I wish somebody would have told me this earlier." Because in my mind, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so hard. It shouldn't be, it should be easy. And if it was easy, it's meant for me. And if it's hard, then it's not meant for me." Like that was my thought process at the beginning. But now that I read this book, she said that, and I read that conference talk, I was like, oh, like that makes sense. Like it's an adjustment at the beginning, and you just can't give things, you have to give things a full try before kind of letting them go. Which is comforting because I mean, change is always hard. Any job, any move, anything little too, like a new iPhone, like that's an adjustment too. Like anything new, and this new iPhone may be 10 times easier than your old one, but because it's hard, you don't want it. You want your old one. You want your old flip phone because it's hard. You want to go back to what is familiar for you. But then this familiarity or this new concept that's hard will become familiar and you're going to think, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome." It just takes that patience and that time to get used to it and kind of learn the ways of that new concept. So I also very, very much love that concept because I feel like it's misinterpreted. I feel like um she talked about this in the book. You cannot predict the future. Your gut cannot predict the future. You cannot predict the future. It's just the way it is. So stop trying. She's like, live in the present and listen to your like unconscious thoughts and gut feelings about things in the present, and that will tell you if it's for you or not. So I loved that because often we're like, oh, I feel like I shouldn't do it. I feel like something's like just not going to work out with us. I'm just not going to do it, which is a limiting belief. So a lot of times people won't try things because they're like, oh, I just don't feel good about it. And it's just because it's hard. It's because it's new, you know?
Yeah, for sure. It's uncertain. It's not part of like your familiar routine, so you just feel scared and you just it's kind of like one of those like examples of I guess the self-sabotage because like
Hmm.
you're just not letting yourself try something new because you're so stuck in your routines kind of.
Yes. And like you see this is a perfect example. Um, like the older generation, like our grandparents,
Mhm.
they will not accept technology. They're like, I want to walk, or I want all mail to be physical and in my mailbox. When they could get an email in literally 0.2 seconds, they're like, nope, send me a letter. Like they barely will touch a flip phone. Like, and so it's just so interesting too, because I work in healthcare and we use apps for all the hospitals and all your appointments and all your appointment notes. You can see everything on the app. And I'm like, I am like begging this older generation, I'm like, please get the app. Like you will, I know it's hard at first, but I'm like, you will love it. It has all your questions right there. And you'll never miss an appointment because it sends you reminders and they just, I mean, I don't blame them either. That's a big change, but that's just a perfect example of like there's so much opportunity out there, but because we're so resistant to change, because change is uncomfortable, we are limiting ourselves for what we could become. Everything self-development is uncomfortable. I was also going to talk about that today. I'm like,
Yeah.
everything self-development is uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. And so, but it's that change, it's necessary. And it's necessary to be uncomfortable all the time to develop into the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And I think that it's been interesting like the past few weeks, like reading this book and then like I started like my summer job and like the team that I'm working with, like the main boss guy, he's super cool. He's just such a fun person. I love his personality so much. And like he has created like such a cool just program and system, and it's just amazing. And he has us do during our training weeks, he had us do this like personality test called True Colors, and it was just like super cool to just like learn about each other in that way and like be like, okay, yeah, that's why I feel this passion about this, and like that's why, it just like was so awesome and I loved it. And then just yesterday we did a different kind of test. It's like a strengths test. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like it's from a book. Oh, Clifton Strengths is what it's called.
Mm.
And you like can take this test and it's 200 questions and it's like kind of this or that. It give you options and like you have to say which one like strongly describes you more. And like yeah, they're 200 questions, but you only have 20 seconds for each. So it was like kind of honestly, I was stressed taking it because it was going so fast, and but so then, like, if you take more than 20 seconds, it, like, pauses it, and then, so then I would just take a few deep breaths, and then I would keep going, like, I don't know, I didn't like how fast-paced it was, but it ended up being really cool because then it, like, points out so there's, like, 34 strengths, and then it, like, tells you your top 5, and, like, at first when I, like, saw my top 5, I was just like, "I don't know, like, I feel like that's true," but, like, I was reading some of the other ones and I was like, "I feel like that's also how who I am, and that's also me, like, I also have that strength," but it was just, like it was just really interesting, but so anyway, so the combination of, like, the book and then those 2, like, kind of personality tests I've done recently have just been, like, kind of uncomfortable for me because it's been, like, a way of, like, opening up, like, kind of self-reflection and just, like, having these like conversations in my head and with like my work environment and just like thinking of like kind of ways I can like use my strengths but also like use the strengths of others and like rely on others. And I don't know, it's just been really interesting to like have all three of these happening at the same time. It's like yesterday I like came home after work and I was kind of like emotional, like crying for a little bit just because I was like, this has just been a lot all at once, just kind of like of just uncomfortable change. And like I can tell it's like good and I can tell like I'm like getting there and like I can tell like it will be helpful, but like it is uncomfortable at first and like breaking out of those routines and like breaking out of like the mindset I had before and like becoming aware of all these new concepts has just been a lot, but it's been really good too. So, anyways.
I love that you shared that. No, I really appreciate that you shared that because the characteristics, like it's, I mean, you that pointed out some things that you didn't know before about yourself, probably, right?
Yeah.
And it's humbling to like accept that like you're like, frick, yeah, I could probably work on that. Like, but recognizing that is such a big step. And then wanting to work on it is an even bigger step.
Mhm.
Um, like I share this on my Instagram too. I I think like this self-development journey, it's a lifelong thing, but it definitely is hardest at the beginning. But like last year in August, I was just like, I was so self-limiting. I knew I wasn't living up to my best self. I knew I had a lot of work to do, but I was kind of scared of how much it was going to cost me because I knew it was going to be a lot of work. And then last August, I was just like, that's it. I'm doing it. And it was really hard because like you said, it's like a fire hose. It's like, oh my gosh, and then you're opening these emotions that you were like, I definitely put that under the rug every time I saw that. And that's the important thing too is feeling those emotions. And she talked about that in the book is if you never check your email and then you check it once a year, you're gonna have like, and then in relation to emotions, if those are emotions that come up throughout your day, that's like 15,000 emotions you're gonna feel all at once. It's gonna come out somehow. And I feel like mine came out last August. I just cried and cried and cried and cried all day because I was just so emotional because I just had all these emotions. And I feel like that's part of the journey is just like, and it's healthy. It's just it's part of the journey is when you're uncovering when you're uncomfortable, you're uncovering these emotions and you're discovering these things about yourself and you become emotional. Like multiple times you really do become emotional and that's part of just processing everything and learning learning more about yourself and like I also read this on Instagram. It is not easy to do the healing journey. It looks like literally butterflies, sunrises and sunsets on Instagram, but like it's it's not easy. Like when you choose to build yourself, be uncomfortable, heal yourself. We all use could use healing because this world's hard. It's not easy, and it when they say you have to do the work, they literally mean you have to do the work because the work is not easy. And so I love that you shared that because I remember the first few months when I was like really trying to improve myself, I was so exhausted because it's exhausting when you are feeling your feels, it's exhausting. It takes so much energy from you. I was like, I genuinely was like, is this worth it? Like, gosh, like this is a lot. And I was like, what if I just go back? Like in my mind, like seriously, for the first like 8 months, my mind, I remember every day it was like a battle. My mind would try to like take me back to my old habits and try to keep me in those like sabotaging, self-limiting thoughts because that's what it knew. You have to develop those like brain pathways to work the way you want them to work because you've done, 20 plus years of developing this brain pathway and now you're trying to reset it. So I do remember like seriously the first like 8 months, my brain constantly trying to go back to my old habits, which was so hard because then I consciously had to fight it. And it was a lot of work, like you said, like, and it's a lifelong thing, but the beginning is the hardest part. Like breaking those habits and learning how to feel your feels is the hardest part. So I feel you. And I hope like anyone else who listens like relates to you and also my experience because I feel like it's not talked about. Like that lonely period, not lonely, but like it's just a hard period of transition. And I went through it a similar time too. You just graduated college. I had barely pretty much graduated college too when I was kind of like adjusting to the corporate world and then also like doing this self-development too. So I'm really happy you shared that because I had a very similar experience and I still do, just not as intensely because I'm like a year into it now. So
Yeah, yeah, I know it'll get easier and like it I can tell it will be really, really good. It's
and it's
just
a transition, right? Like this is a change for you. Like you
yeah.
said, and it's going to be hard at the beginning too. Like you said, it's a change. Just like getting married, this is a big change, a job change, a career. Basically, you're going from student to working full time. That's such a hard transition.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's
learning to like work with others is way like others in like the your career in the corporate world is so different than doing a group project, honestly.
yeah, seriously. No, that's so true. And like, yeah, it was just like an interesting thing because I like finished student teaching and like my portfolio and everything I had to submit like first week of April. And then I like didn't have like from April till like halfway almost end of May, like I was working three different jobs. Like I was busy, but like they weren't like always that consistent of schedules because it was like dependent on the week. Like some weeks I worked more, some weeks I worked less. And so that was like really hard to go from like very consistent like student teaching schedule, like I'm in the classroom all the time, to like trying to fit in just staying busy and like also just not having homework to like keep me busy at night. And so that was just like really hard. And then but now that it's been like about 2 months and I'm like in like a more consistent summer job, it's like been a lot better, but it's still just yeah, there's just kind of all those changes to like go through and like I can feel myself craving just August to come to when I'm like fully settled in my new classroom
Yes.
teaching, and I'm just like, I can feel myself just being like, oh, I just need to make it to then, and like it will be so nice to just like have a consistent like this is what it's going to be for the next 9 months of the school year. Like this is what it's going to be like, and I like know that that's going to be really nice, and so I can feel myself wanting that so badly, but also just trying to be okay with where I'm at and taking one step
Hmm.
at a time and everything like that. So, anyways.
And like routine is so good. Like routine is like we talk about all the time with kids, they need routine. Talk all the time with like dogs, they need routine. What makes us think that we don't need routine? Like we need routine too, because that's like how we build those good habits. That's how we have security. That's how we can control is we have routine. I mean, we learn to be flexible like emotionally. Like when things come up, we don't need to like have a moment because it messes up our routine perfectly, but the routine is super helpful. So I'm really excited for you. But that will also be a big change in August too. But you know it's more permanent, right? You're kind of in that transition period, which is always hard. You feel like you just antsy to get started. I
Mhm.
actually start school in August too. And well, I'm going back to school as a student. You're teaching. I'm going back to school as a student in August. And I feel the same way. I'm like, I'm kind of antsy to get started because I'm in this kind of transition period. I've always known I wanted to go to graduate school, but this last 2 years have just been kind of like, I know it's not permanent. And so I've been in this like weird spot where I've known I wanted to go back to school, but I haven't. So I'm excited to go back to school and kind of like have that like permanent knowing I'm going to be in school for the next how many years and I'm just going to get settled, which is always nice. But change will always be hard, but like you said, if we just kind of work through it, it'll get better, you know?
Yeah, I agree. And like um with the like emotional side too that we've been mentioning, like I wrote down something that she said that I love was that emotions are not optional experiences. Like when they're not
Yes.
felt, then they get stuck in your body, like you were saying, like the different parts of your body kind of react, and like I just love that so much. Like it's emotions are not optional. We gotta feel them. We gotta like let it through. And that was something I loved about taking the strengths test was that like some of like my biggest strengths is all like there's like different categories, and most of mine were in like the blue category, which is like relationships, and like one of them was connectedness, empathy, and then relator, like just trying to like connect people together and like just be a mediator. And oh, the other one was harmony. Just like I just was, I don't know, it was really cool to read about, and I felt like and it resonated with me too because I just feel like I'm more of like an emotional like aware. I guess like I just try to like be aware of my emotions all the time, and I try to like understand where they're coming from, and like I've tried to develop that skill for the past few years, and that's like become something that I'm really glad that I have in my life is just being aware of the like of the emotions as they come and just reacting how I need to in the moment, I guess. And like I don't know, it's just I'm just glad to like be realizing that that's a strength because like it can sometimes seem as a weakness too to me, and so like it's been good.
Yes.
It's
Because it seems like a weakness because society has made it look like a weakness when
Mhm.
it's not.
Yes.
Because it's like I'm so proud of you for being able to develop that as a strength because that's something that I literally am basing this whole podcast off of is this is a weakness of mine is trying to regulate my or trying to like not regulate but like be able to recognize and act appropriately. Recognize, feel, act appropriately, which is not easy. Like you really have to it's so funny. I will tell Jake sometimes I'm like I'm feeling a little like upset. Let me figure out why. Because
Mhm.
sometimes you're like, I don't even know why I'm upset. And it sounds like such kindergarten stuff. Like when you're like, okay, I'm feeling upset. Let me ask the why question until I figure out why I'm upset. Because you'd be surprised what makes you upset. Like, because we are so dysregulated from our emotions most of the time. And so that I'm proud of you that you're able to develop that skill. That's something you need to give me lessons. I'm
Um,
that's something I'm really, really working on. It's hard.
No, it's true, and like, yeah, I think that the first step for me and what I've been just really trying to do is like what you said, like, okay, recognize the feeling and like I'll just I know now I can't just push it off. Like it's I feel like for me the most oftentimes I recognize this is when I'm about to go to sleep. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to rest my brain. I'm trying to shut down my brain to go to sleep. And then I'm like thinking, and then like if for some reason like I'm feeling like it's stuck in my chest, like just like whether it be anxiety or stress or worry or whatever's happening, like I just have noticed that like I can't fall asleep if it's still there. And so like lately, like my husband Bergham's been like he's doing school through the summer, so he's like been super busy, and I have to wake up early for my job, so I've been going to bed like earlier than him. And then sometimes I just like call him and like, can you come back in the room? And then he comes in. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling this. I just need to like talk about this for just a few minutes, and then I'll probably be fine. And then once I talk about it for a few more minutes, then I'm able to fall asleep. And it's just like I just think that that's my daily check-in is when I'm trying to fall asleep. And like if I can't, then I'm like, okay, what's up? What can I process and what do I need to like talk through in order to be able to relax and decompress from my day.
Yeah, you give it the time and the space it needs.
Hmm.
She talked about in the book too. She's like, you don't need to feel it right every time it comes up because you'll get nothing done because we have a lot of emotions throughout the day. But
Yes.
she's like, you do need to check in, for a few minutes every day. And so I love that you even have a routine with that of like, if you're feeling something when you're going to bed, then you work through it because that kind of, I mean, that's something that I need to do better at because my sleep is affected sometimes with when my emotions aren't like registered, regulated, then you don't sleep well and you're just up stressing all night. And so I love that you're able to just give it the time and space you need. Sometimes I do that with Jake too. I'll say, I need 5 minutes. And I will just vent for 5 minutes and then I go, I'm done. And then like he's like, okay, do you want me to solve your problem or do you just want me to listen? And I'm like, I just need you to listen and then validate my feelings and then I'm done. Like that's it. And so the
Yeah.
fact that like I get 5 minutes, like we I mean sometimes I take longer, but I need to compress that timeline. I'm still working on that. But because if you let it affect your whole day, like if you had a bad encounter, let's say at the grocery store, and you don't like emotionally work through that, it's gonna affect your whole day because you're gonna have that on your chest the whole day. And so and even through your next day too, because if you don't sleep good, now it's affecting your next day. So it's interesting how one person cuts you off in traffic and it's like, okay, I'm done. Like that's it. And so it's really important, like you said, to be able to like give those emotions the time and space that they need. And it's helpful that you're able to have Brigham to help you with that. Because sometimes that's what we need too, is other people to kind of bounce our ideas off of. Because sometimes we get stuck in our own head and we kind of just go round and round and round with our thoughts. And then we just need to shoot them at somebody and then we're done. And then that's it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. 100%. Yep.
Well, this was such a good discussion about this book. Once again, it's called The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. This is probably my favorite book that I've read. I mean, I have other books that are very close to it. Um, but overall, it's just really good about kind of just pointing out the mo emotions and kind of those thoughts in a contextual way that you can think about. You've probably already thought about these things, but she brings it out in a way that like you can understand it and you can kind of really reflect on it, which is why I like this book. Um, and my last thoughts on this book is just give it a read. It is an amazing, amazing book. You don't need to finish it in a week. This is something that like you could read chapter by chapter and it's completely different concepts and you can just digest each of those concepts as you need. But I really just love this book. It's really honestly helped change my life and kind of helped me have a direction and knowledge of where I want to go and who I want to be. And I just really, really encourage you listeners to just give it a try. It's really, really great and really take the time to reflect on it. That's the most important part is really get to know you through this book. Haley, would you like to leave some last thoughts with our listeners?
Yeah, I think I agree for sure. Just give it a try. And like, even though like I think like we both mentioned, like the first time you go through it and just kind of at first you can kind of have the reaction of, I don't know if this is for me, like it doesn't feel like it fits. And like I think that just taking what parts do resonate with you and running with those, because I think there were still some things I'm just like, no, but like just the parts that you do feel like, okay, yeah, I can see that and I can see how that would help. Just accepting those, writing those down, and just working on those, like that would be worth your time still. Like it's okay if not every part of the book is like your favorite thing, but like just accepting all the ones that like do help you, then like that would make a difference, I think.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, like she said, just take the nuggets that apply to you. That goes with any book. Just take the nuggets that apply to you and just take the time to reflect on it. And once again, it's so great to have you all here. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the time that you take to listen to these episodes. I put my heart into these, and I hope that you all feel that. And I'm really excited to be able to make another one next week, and we'll see y'all there.